Welcome to the JCPS MTSS training on the Feedback Toolkit with the focus on the high-yield practice of classroom discussion. I'm Stephanie Roberts, an MTSS engagement resource teacher with Elementary Zone 1. And with me, I have Bo Burkett, an MTSS engagement resource teacher with the high school zone. Please take a moment to type the case-sensitive bit.ly into your web browser. This will allow you access to the resources and links for the activities throughout this presentation. Here you will see the 6 components that make up the MTSS department, or multi-tiered systems of support. MTSS focuses on overall school improvement by aligning resources and support for both teachers and students. We provide multiple levels of support for learners that address academic, social, emotional, and behavioral needs, and produce professional development that is aligned with schools and the district as a whole. JCPS has 3 departments within MTSS, as shown on this concept map. MTSS Academics is directed by Donna Lawson. They support schools by ensuring teachers are providing all students with academic supports with the focus of Tier 2 and Tier 3 intervention and support. The MTSS Behavior Department, directed by Sandra Hensel, supports schools in implementing school-wide behavior systems and frameworks, including positive behavior interventions and supports, PBIS, and the Behavior Support Systems Model, which is an alignment of PBIS and restorative practices. Our department is MTSS Engagement, and the goal is to increase student achievement by equipping teachers with high-yield pedagogical practices to maximize student engagement. 6 MTSS toolkits were created to provide resources for Tier 1 instructional practices to increase student engagement, reduce behavior, and decrease disproportionality. These are the 6 MTSS toolkits. If you click the toolkit image, you will access the MTSS department webpage as well as each toolkit. The feedback toolkit includes high-yield practices that show feedback is information provided by an agent about aspects of one's performance or understanding. The most powerful form of feedback comes when the teachers seek feedback from the students as to what they know, what they understand, and where they have misconceptions. Today, we will examine the high-yield practice of classroom discussion from this feedback toolkit. You will find ways to implement this into your practice and identify ways to ensure equitable classroom discussion within your instruction. This high-yield practice provides students with intentional opportunities for interactive classroom discussions with their peers to generate collaborative feedback.
Classroom discussions are characterized by the fact that A, they involve a high degree of student activity. B, the questions and problems of learners become visible through spoken dialogue in the learning process. C, learners receive feedback from teachers. And D, teachers receive many kinds of feedback on their instruction from students. The following is a short video of students using discussion within the classroom. During this video, be sure to use metacognition. In other words, think about your thinking. What do you notice? What do you wonder? What questions do you have?
Put your hand up if someone in your family comes from somewhere else in the world and has come to live in London. Could you turn to the person next to you and have a discussion about this talking point?
I think Stratford is a better place to live because they're not against anyone and it's... So can I just clarify you? What do you mean by like against?
What we see is the keystone to everything that happens in the curriculum. There are such high expectations for talk, and it does really make a difference in the children how articulate and how confident they are.
The vision of School 21 is to prepare young people for the world that they're going to go into in the 21st century. I think one of the biggest barriers to the students we serve really getting on in life is lack of good communication skills. We need to elevate speaking to the same level as reading and writing.
So we have a vote. What makes me enjoy talking the most is that everybody's listening to you and you're like part of the world and you feel respected and important.
When I'm talking, they're listening what I'm saying, and sometimes they give me questions, or maybe I give them questions.
Every child within this school is expected to speak in every lesson, in every opportunity throughout their school day. And we try and create lots of different contexts for young people to hone their skills as speakers.
Right, so what I want us to do now is to have a discussion about different kinds of culture. And I want us to discuss this. Some cultures are better than others.
I think every teacher, if you say to them, do you talk in your classroom? Of course there's talking in the classroom, but what's different here is the deliberateness of it.
Every teacher needs to have that toolkit of things that they can draw on to bring effective talk into their practice.
We've done a lot of work introducing sentence stems that children can use for different situations, so for agreeing with somebody, for disagreeing politely with someone, for challenging someone.
And while we're doing that, I want you to make sure that you're using some of the sentence stems. So you might say linking to someone's point or build on something that somebody has said.
Building on I agree, because maybe...
The thing that's had the biggest impact on my practice is probably discussion guidelines.
We are going to be discussing why beliefs were important or why they weren't important in ancient Greece. Could anybody remind me about any of our discussion guidelines?
One of them is when someone's not contributing, you have to invite them by asking them a question or saying their name.
Excellent. Why would you do that, Aaron?
Then everyone has an idea.
Everyone gets to share their idea, don't they? Well done.
So discussion guidelines were created in conjunction with the children. These are the 5 or 6 key things that we think make a really good discussion. I've been able to take a step back, and I think that the children take on a larger role within the classroom.
I think it should be Ares and Athena because they're both the god of war.
Yeah, but to challenge your diva, there are lots of fish.
So another key way of promoting oracy in the classroom is to think carefully about the groupings that you use. So whether you're getting them to talk in pairs or in trios or in larger groups.
Sometimes it's best to have students in threes. Sometimes we look at how they can stand in the traverse opposite each other. Each of those different groupings enables a different type of conversation.
If you see inside them, we're all human beings and we're all people.
Our oracy programme is comprehensive. It has to be seen in maths and science and those subjects that traditionally haven't had a talk focus.
There are 24 cookies altogether.
There are 24 cookies altogether.
There are 3 children.
There are 3 children.
All right, let's see if I would say that I'd always encouraged talk in my maths lessons before, but what's changed is that I really plan very carefully for talk, and I model and structure the talk very explicitly.
Okay, so we're going to go and do our talk task.
The talk task, they get to practice what they've done in the new learning, and they're talking through what they're doing. So it's about developing their vocabulary and language of explanation.
We were talking about fractions. We done like 4 circles, and then we needed to share 24 in each group. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. Your turn. We were using sentences to help us. 24 shared equally between 4 children is equal to 6. Let's do another one.
There are lots of different reasons why we get students who may not feel it's almost their place to speak. So for all those reasons, oracy is an issue of equality, of equity, of social mobility.
Wow, I heard some pretty amazing discussions going on just now. So let's get some feedback from some groups.
Because of the focus on oracy, we've seen our students become much more confident in their ideas. By creating the context and the opportunities for them to speak, they've just flown and become eloquent, engaging speakers.
Hayden?
We came to a decision and said that we disagree with the text. Everyone is unique. Everyone's the same, but they do their things in different ways.
Some takeaways from the video include the following. Discussion should be comprehensive in all subjects. We must plan for talk. Class created list of discussion guidelines. To help with fostering discussions in the classroom, we have linked an article discussing strategies for developing confident speakers who can share their thoughts and learning. There is a wealth of research supporting the use of engagement strategies during instruction. This quote by Conroy, Sutherland, Snyder, and Marsh illustrates one of the most important points, that students who are actively engaged in the learning process are less likely to exhibit inappropriate behaviors and more likely to achieve academic success. In other words, as student engagement increases, behavior events decrease. This allows the teacher to spend more time focused on content, which leads to a dramatic increase in academic achievement. One of the most powerful ways to improve your ability to teach is to take time to self-reflect. The following slides contain a quote about classroom discussion. Please take some time to read the quote and reflect on your reactions, thoughts, ideas, and connections. Quote 1, when your students look back on the time they've spent in your classroom, will they remember the great things that you said or the great things that they themselves said? You decide. John Hattie. Please pause the video and take some time to reflect and or record your reactions, thoughts, and ideas about this quote. Quote 2, there is one important guideline to keep in mind, however, and that is related to cognitive load. During effective class discussion, ensure that students are doing deep thinking and talking about the material, not the teacher. Deborah Russell. Again, please pause the video and take some time to reflect and or record your reactions, thoughts, and ideas about this quote. Quote 3, no classroom is effective if there is no discussion and movement of students in a constructive manner, where the topic is lively and communication is two-way. In fact, students must indulge in some action and must not remain seated in silence, listening only. Raul Dev. One last time, we ask you to please pause the video and take some time to reflect and or record your reactions, thoughts, and ideas about this quote.
When considering equitable class discussions, teachers can be intentional about calling on a diverse set of voices, ensuring multiple perspectives. When teachers ensure equitable discussion, they augment students' learning, boost their confidence, and reinforce values. There are two main key components of having an equitable class discussion. One is setting the standard of inclusion. Students who are called on over and over may come to view their perspectives as the right perspective. At the same time, students who are not called on often may begin to perceive their teachers as unfair and become even less likely to contribute. Therefore, establishing inclusive and equitable norms of participation from the beginning is key. The second component is valuing diverse voices. Research shows that students who are more likely to contribute to discussion are more confident and extroverted. Some things to consider are purposefully seeking a mix of voices and utilizing wait time. This helps to ensure that students learn from their peers of different backgrounds. Some tips for equitable participation include establishing the norm that all students wishing to participate should raise their hand or have a management way of allowing them to contribute. Calling on a range of raised hands or volunteers, while not always calling on the first hand you see. Consider the implications of your discussion strategies and how patterns of discussion correlate with the classroom's demographic makeup. This is involved in the pre-planning of questions and prompts for the classroom discussion. Establishing inclusive and equitable norms of participation in the very first class is essential. We're going to check out a video where a professor from Harvard College demonstrates that even in a seminar setting, he calls on students to monitor equitable participation.
It's absolutely essential to figure out a way of managing who's speaking when, who's taking turns in any kind of seminar discussion. You don't want one or two or three or a cohort of voices to kind of dominate the discussion. I, at least initially, will call on people when they raise their hand. So there's a norm that's sort of established early on that usually sustains itself through the term. I usually take the lead in that, in part because I am very intentional about about making sure that I call on people in equitable ways. And I will sometimes wait if there are 3 male hands up. I will wait for a woman's hand to go up, and I'll call on her.
It becomes impervious to like a legal structure because they're just so ingrained.
Yeah.
Oh, also going back to what you were saying about the Irish boys.
I also try to do that, particularly in a class like this, do that with respect to racial identities and ethnic identities, and try to not call on a whole bunch of white people all at once, and make sure that people of color and white people are having kind of equitable distribution of comments.
I was very conscious of kind of how many times like white students had spoken compared to how many times black students had spoken. I think it is very important that he is the one that is deciding who gets to talk. He gets to call on someone that hasn't talked in a while instead of always having like the loudest, most confident person like choose when they will speak.
The seminar definitely helped me be more attentive to the different speakers in the room and the different ways in which people stepped up and then stepped back. I was more quiet towards the beginning, and it really helped me see, you know, with regards to sophomores, juniors, or seniors, who speaks up when.
I had another seminar this semester in which a similar attempt was made to try and balance the perspectives and things like that. And so I, being a person who has a lot to say and has in the past and in this other class become agitated when I know that professors and teachers all the way back to elementary school would pass over me, it was much easier to deal with in Professor McCarthy's class because the students are just so good. And it like sounds cheesy, but like I gained a lot from their perspectives. And so I was happy to yield to them.
For a class like this, where we are talking about issues of equity and equality and race and gender and difference and power and inequality and all these things, there is nothing more important to a classroom dynamic than making sure that there's equitable contribution, that everybody feels included, that they belong, that they have the capacity to be brave, that they're going to be respected when they are. But all of those things about some dynamics of identity and navigating the dynamics of identity and power that relates to identity is something that I think about all the time.
From the video, we saw that it is essential to figure out a way of managing who's speaking when, who's taking turns, so a few students do not dominate the discussion. Wait time is essential. This allows for all students to process and become a part of the discussion. This also allows students to step up or back when they begin to notice that the discussion is equitable and a variety of voices are being heard. When you set up ways for students to have equitable participation in the classroom discussion, everyone feels included, like they belong, they have the capacity to be brave, and are respected. Imagine the connection setting up this culture in the classroom has with building positive relationships, both from the teacher to the student and student to student. These reflection questions are powerful components of engaging classroom discussion. Take a minute to reflect on your own practice and think about how you incorporate these components into classroom discussions. This is also a great resource to come back to and use as a self-reflection tool as you move forward in your lesson planning.
As with the use of any high-yield practice, we need to take into account cultural, exceptional child, and project-based learning considerations. Culturally responsive considerations include the following. Teachers should provide positive, responsive feedback regarding student responses and participation, incorporate student responses, ideas, languages, and experiences, prompt students with effective and cognitive feedback, validate student contributions while also clarifying and expanding their statements, and create multiple opportunities for students to respond using dialogue. Exceptional child education considerations include increasing opportunities to respond, consistently monitoring progress and corrective feedback in a timely manner, providing relevant, specific, modeled, positive, and encouraging feedback, providing feedback based on the student's performance, and planning for and providing multiple means of engagement through choice and relevant, authentic activities. For project-based learning, teachers should create many opportunities to receive feedback from students throughout the project, and specific feedback should be given to students to guide next steps. One-on-one and small group conferences should occur throughout the learning process. Rubrics should be used during conferences as a guide to ensure feedback is specific and aimed at desired goals. Formal feedback checks should be scheduled in advance, and many lessons should be used throughout the project to clear up common misconceptions and difficulties held by the majority of students. In order to help with implementing effective and equitable classroom discussion, we have provided you with the Plan, Do, Study, Act, or PDSA tool, which is linked to the slide. During an upcoming PLC, be sure to discuss ways to implement effective and equitable classroom discussion within your instruction. Thank you for joining us to learn more about having effective classroom discussion as a way to enhance feedback. If you would like to learn more information about the MTSS toolkits and other high-yield practices, please visit our website by clicking on the link.